Roxanne, that was way too kind. I really appreciate it. Well, it's a pleasure to serve ASLO. It's a pleasure to serve actually all four of these societies and other societies through the Council of Scientific Society Presidents. It's a distinct honor also. But before I get going, I'm supposed to give a little talk this morning, and I think I have some slides somewhere. But I have to dispel a couple of rumors. We're living in a world of extreme close-ups, and you're seeing my face really, really big. And I would like to tell you that at most scientific meetings, there's usually a little blood on the floor after the meeting is over, but it's not normally the dance floor. But so this is only an injury, what you're seeing. So should I begin to bleed again, don't be alarmed. Don't run screaming from the room. It has nothing to do with the rumored fist fight. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Anyway. But and the other thing I wanted to do was make a little bit of a comment on what John was saying yesterday. We did have some frank discussions about funding in science, and at one point I believe I made the point that the genius and wonder of science isn't in the big equipment that you use or the phenomenal amount of data you collect, but it's in the creativity that we use. And I made the point that one can do zooplankton work with an old stocking and preserved with a bottle of vodka. And I just wanted you all to know that those comments had nothing to do with any interest that I have in ladies' fashion or anything like that, but it has only really to do with limnology. And with that, I think I will start my presentation. It has to be rather quick, and I have a lot of things I wanted to tell you. And I'd like to also to say, get your cell phones out, please, and get ready, because I'm going to ask you to use them in a second, which is a little odd for a speaker, I think. So this is my plan. I'm going to tell you a bit about ASLO in case you don't know about it, talk briefly about some of the ideas that John, Randy, Steve, and I have been talking about as presidents of these four wonderful societies. Invite you to the president's panel tomorrow morning, and I really hope to see a lot of you there. You won't have been dancing all night before that, so the excuses may be fewer, so I hope you'll be there. And then I get to the distinct honor of introducing our award-winning speaker this morning. So here's about ASLO. It's called the Association for the Sciences of Limnology and Oceanography. It was started in the 1930s actually as the American Society of Limnology only, and then added the Pacific Society of Oceanography in the 1940s and became the American Society of Limnology and Oceanography. As our demography changed, we changed to our current name in 2011. We have about 4,500 members, and they're about 45% limnologists, 55% obviously oceanographers. 28% of the limnologists do both limnology and oceanography, so we work across salinity gradients. We publish 3 journals and a bulletin and an electronic lecture series, and we have an e-books program. The journals all start with limnology and oceanography, but we have 3 of them in various incarnations of the L&O brand. We have 1.5 meetings annually. About a third of them are principally inland waters type meetings. About a third are mostly marine, and the other third is a nice mix. We also offer free membership and free journals to students from 157 developing countries around the world, and this includes access to travel grants and student benefits to build the science enterprise globally. So I wanted to make a quick reminder to ASLO members. We have an election underway right now. Please vote in this ongoing election. You all know how to do it. I was appalled to hear at the CSSP meeting that in general 7 to 15% of members actually participate in science society elections. It'd be nice if we had more turnout and more representation. Voting closes in 1 week on the 31st of May. We have some really nice meetings coming up for those of you who'd be interested in coming to these. We're having one in Spain in a little less than a year. Call for special sessions is extended to the 30th of May. We have an ocean science meeting in New Orleans coming up in 2016 and a aquatic sciences meeting in Santa Fe in 2016. And I know many SFS members have been with us at those meetings as we've collaborated on the Santa Fe venue. The title of the conference is a time of rapid change. It's a time of rapid change for science societies too. And Randy, Steve, and John and I are really excited that our societies are working together, and I certainly hope this is something we can continue into the future. Science is all about cooperation. We also have the CAS, the Consortium of Aquatic Science Societies, a growing organization of aquatic science societies that is built to formalize those, or informalize anyway, those collaborations. And it is totally about cooperation among societies, and we are really looking forward to future collaborations. These societies work really well together. Our societies are close together in a neighborhood of science societies. I estimate there are about 200 aquatic science societies on the planet right now. And because I can't resist data, I have done a PCA of these science societies based on their mission statements. And you can see the 5 science societies indicated here and the kinds of PCA axes there are. This only shows about 70 of those science societies, but you can see that we live quite close together in a collaborating science neighborhood. Anya Belyeva, if she is here, will be telling me this should have been the NMDS, but anyway, it's a PCA. Sorry, it's not perfect. Our 4 societies work in all of the world's waters across a salinity gradient. This graph that I can't really point to you on the left-hand side, on the left-hand side shows all the water of the planet, and the big yellow thing is saline water. That's where there are at least 3 societies that, and maybe 4 actually, that bridge across those salinities all across the world. Over on the right-hand side, you see the tiny little slice at the top that is the inland water slice of all the water in the world, but it is of extremely strategic importance. And that's the, I don't know, something like the blue or the red. It's about 1.5% of the liquid continental water, tiny bit. And you can visualize this by looking at the size of a football stadium. If all the world's water is a football stadium, the inland waters that we work on, a lot of us, would be only represented by a centimeter of that football stadium. So it's a very small but very useful fraction, and very strategic. Very strategic too, because the inland waters are probably the most important strategic resource on the planet. This is a graph that just shows that we're overexploiting those waters phenomenally. And the rates of abstraction alone are many times the rates of renewal, which is about 7% annually on the continents. I'm really curious about how similar the things are that our members do, and so I surveyed top people in each society recently to see what the biggest problems and the most important paradigms are. The analysis isn't finished, but you should look down at the bottom there, especially those of you who are members of PSA, but everyone else too. There's a little cell phone number down there. Put it in your phone and get ready to send me some information, because I'd like to increase the sort of crowdsource the information on what are the most important problems. I asked very important people in our societies what the top problems and paradigms are now, or what the top problems are now, what they will be in 10 years, and what paradigms we use to solve them. And there you see what I think of as a paradigm. So here's what the top problems are in 4 fields, and I'm sorry PSA isn't on here. I don't have a big enough sample size yet, so get ready and just send me out some suggestions about problems and paradigms, and I'll summarize them by tomorrow. But one thing I'd like you to do is just look at the kinds of words that come up as our top 10 problems in our fields, and there are tons of parallels amongst our societies, and I dare say that if we expanded this a little bit further, we'd find that the same was true across 70 or maybe even 100 different science societies. We're working on similar problems, and we're using similar tools. I mean, here's one example. Climate change shows up in the top 10 of it, all 4 groups, limnology, oceanography, freshwater science, and wetland science. Eutrophication, pollution also shows up everywhere. There are lots of parallels. Habitat destruction in every one of our fields. Extremely important. We have extreme parallels, really, in the kinds of problems we try to solve. The top 10 paradigms are less complete, and I'd love to complete them more. But this will give you an idea of what many people are thinking about in your society. about what the most important tools are for solving these problems. And again, take the cell phone number and send me some suggestions, and it'll scroll in and I'll summarize them and get a little bit more information. A bigger sample size will help us do this. But if you look across this, you'll see that we do very, very similar sorts of things. And we use very similar sorts of tools, which means that these meetings just have to be successful when we work together. One of the top 10 problems that shows up a lot is funding, and this is something that Randy, John, and Steve and I have talked about really a lot. Funding is considered to be rather low. Oceanographers seem to be even more concerned about it than limnologists or inland waters people are. It's a huge problem, and that's the one that I was referring to a little bit earlier. So I'd like to also talk about what I call the water funding paradox, and I hope you all are convinced, and I'll bet you are, that water is the most important strategic resource on Earth right now, especially inland waters. And yet, in most countries around the world, there is no coherent funding structure for research on continental water, none whatsoever. For example, in NSF, proposals go through the environmental biology area, even though we may be doing biogeochemistry. And NSERC in Canada is even worse in that all proposals for oceanography and limnology will go through ecology and evolution. So Randy, John, Stephen, and I feel that we'd like our societies to work together with other societies too to secure inland water funding sources, since we're the ones who can supply that science. We'll be talking about that tomorrow, and I hope you'll come and meet us for the President's Roundtable. The presidents of our 4 societies, but we also have presidents of aquatic science societies here representing somewhere between 30 and 40 different societies, and they'll be participating in this open forum too. Our job is to give you what you need to be successful in your science, but our other job is to use our combined strengths to work to ensure sustainable water into the future. We hope to have a free-ranging discussion and listening session, so I really hope you'll join us tomorrow for more discussions.